Hello, welcome to Season 7 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is the current state of horror. We'll be watching 20 or so movies from the last couple of years, reviewing them like normal, and then also talking about some of the larger trends we see. If you want to see the list and follow along, check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So, had you seen Pet Sematary before, the new one?
Not the new one. This is the first time. And I actually hadn't seen the old one in a really long time.
I've never seen the old one.
Oh, really? I'll have to do it for this.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you, very much about it. I just remember the guy from the Munsters being in it. It's been that long.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, last year, at the beginning of the year, I read the book because I knew the movie was coming out. And after seeing it and liking that movie, I was really excited. And then this one, it seemed like I didn't get to see it when it was in theaters. I just completely missed it, which is weird because I go to a lot of movies. And I was trying to figure out why that would have been. And so I was looking back and seeing, well, was there something going on at that time? And I know usually middle of April, and this came out April 5th of last year. Normally in the middle of April, we go back to Oklahoma for my mom's birthday. So this movie came out on April 5th, and Avengers Endgame came out April 26th.
Oh, yeah. So
every theater here just had 20 screens of Avengers Endgame for 2 months, so that's why I didn't see it. So, but yeah, I had every intention of doing it at the time, and then I didn't, and then I was watching Amazon constantly until it was available for rent. So I had seen it once before, and then came back to it this time, and so I have strong opinions on this one, and I'm interested to hear what yours are.
Nice. I probably don't have that strong of opinions on it, but I'll let you know what they are.
Hey, we're like the odd couple.
Yeah.
Just works out. All right, I'll introduce it, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we'll get to it. In 2019, Paramount Pictures brought us Pet Sematary. This was the second movie adaptation of Stephen King's novel of the same name from 1983, and the screenplay was written by Jeff Bueller. The movie tells the story of a family who move to a small town where they discover a dark presence deep in the woods that can defy the laws of mortality. This movie stars Jason Clarke and John Lithgow and was made on a budget of around $21 million. It brought in over $113 million at the box office, despite receiving middle-of-the-road reviews from both audiences and critics. It can currently be streamed on Amazon Prime Video.
For free, as long as you have Prime.
Yep.
So one of the facts about this movie is that Stephen King based some of the scenes or things off of his real life. One of the things was Judd, the neighbor. He was kind of one of the guys Stephen King knew in real life. There was always a guy, this is a quote by Stephen King, there was always a guy across the road, King said. The kids were away somewhere, and he was the one who came over and said, you got a problem here with your daughter's cat. And we went over and looked at Smucky, who was the name of the cat, who was on the side of the road. And he hadn't been splattered or anything. He looked okay. He was just dead. So just that encounter is kind of what prompted the character for Judd. Fortunately for him, the then young Owen King didn't pay him a deadly visit. I don't know what that means.
Huh.
Here's another fact. Dee Dee Ramone. You might be familiar with him.
Yeah. He don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery.
Yeah. So he actually wrote the lyrics. So basically this is how it went down for that. I guess Stephen King's a big fan of the Ramones.
Huh.
And this is a quote. I think it was a Friday that we got the call that they wanted to have Ramones to write Pet Sematary, the song Pet Sematary. producer Daniel Ray told Tidal. Dee Dee called me and was like, I'm going to buy the book. He got the book. About 8 hours later, he called me. He left the lyrics on the phone machine. He continued. He was already done. I don't know if he sped read the book or skimmed it. I don't know what he did, but somehow he got the story down, and he got a really good imagery from the whole vibe. However, despite being fast on the lyrics, the band spent nearly 2 weeks recording the song. I think we spent about twice as much on the song as we spent on the Ramones' entire first album, recalled Animal Boy producer Jim Jean. Recalled the Animal Boy producer. I'm not good with names.
It's all right.
I'm good with words. So by now you probably heard that Pet Sematary scares the author. So Stephen King legit, like, this frightened him. I don't know. Did you know that?
Yeah. So one reason I really liked the book was I went into it not knowing anything about it, and there was, in the copy that I got in the beginning, was like an interview with Stephen King about it. So I had no idea what to expect from it, but then listening to him kind of build it up of, these are all these like things that were really, really hard for me to even think through, and writing it was difficult, and everything about this book terrifies me. It was just like, wow, okay.
So I guess he kind of shelved it. Like, his friends and family weren't a huge fan of this, and it legit scared him. Finally, he put it out, and then it became like I think it was like the book spent 32 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, which I don't know if that's good or not. I don't do books. Okay, so both Stephen King and the bestseller, both Stephen King, his wife, and the author Pete Straub thought it was too grim to publish, which is why it was stowed away for however long. However, like the very pets he wrote about, the book was exhumed with a very similar purpose as The Undead to Kill. At the time, King's ensuing contract with Doubleday was a future tax liability on his family, so in an effort to get out, he offered him something evil. Needless to say, it worked. Doubleday published the book. King freed himself of any financial woes, and the world met church. That's what happened, King told EW. That's the reason I published the book. Otherwise, it would still be in a drawer somewhere. Which, could you imagine his drawers and how many books he has in there?
Right.
I bet there's so many.
And which are the ones that were like too grim for him, after all this time?
I know. I hope it comes out one day. Also, Stephen King insisted the film be shot in Maine as a condition of acquiring the rights to the book.
Was that for the new one or the old one, or both?
I would guess this is for the original. I don't know. But anyway, those are all the facts I got. I mean, this is obviously tied into the Stephen King world. Derry was like, it said like 20 miles, and a couple other connections, which I really like. I love that idea.
I agree.
And but those are the main facts I came up with.
Yeah, I like that idea of the sort of the Stephen King universe, and that being developed among decently budgeted horror movies. That's kind of a neat idea. And, with the Conjuring universe around Ed and Lorraine Warren, I think that's kind of a neat thing that gives a lot of ability for creativity among telling stories and tying them together and kind of creating a thing larger than just a single movie, which is what the world of Stephen King is. So that's kind of cool.
It's very brilliant.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing is going in, this isn't a fact, but just going into the very start of this movie, there's something about every time you watch a Stephen King movie, it's a movie based off a Stephen King novel, it makes you want to live in that city. Not every movie he does, but like it just seems real well. Like the beginning of this, like it was like real pretty, nice woodsy area. It seemed like a nice little town that they were living in, and it's just like, man, that's an awesome town. And then the bad happened.
Yeah, he makes you like it and then takes it away from you.
Makes you want to move to Maine.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It always looks like super idyllic in his movies, and like I would go to Derry. I mean, just the way that the movies are shot. Like I feel like there is sort of a style that is coming along with these modern Stephen King interpretations.
Yeah.
But but I thought it was funny too because I feel like you also are seeing a mix in of some of the same like classic horror elements that we've brought up in previous episodes of this season. And I smiled when it started with the overhead shots of a road in the forest with the creepy ambient sounds. That's just become such a typical horror movie opening at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. But it's nice to go back to I mean, I'm sure it was done before this, but specifically The Shining, which is Stephen King. So
yeah. Overall, I felt like they were trying to give this one the It treatment, but I also feel like in that it was like very high budget. They had some known talent behind it. Like it was well made, highly advertised. But I do feel like they tried to fit too much in. And I'm curious what your impression was of the pace of this one, because I came to it after reading and really being into the book, and then I felt like the movie was almost just like a train ride through the book. Like it felt like to me it felt like a bunch of references to things that happened in the book that they tried to just shove into the hour and a half time slot. And like nothing really had time to develop or like build the mood under it. Did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that up. So, I thought the same thing. I mean, I hadn't read the book, but what I wrote down was this movie almost seems like it's a whole bunch of little clips.
Yeah.
Up until like I don't know, like an hour and a half or hour into the movie, or not. I'm sorry. Up until like 30 minutes into the movie, and when there's about an hour left. It was almost like the intro clip, and then Ellie getting lost clip, and then the mom's sister clip, and then the dad can't save Victor clip. I mean, it was just boom, 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 just all these little clips of what was going on, and it made they tried to they tied all those in at the end, or towards the rest of the movie, but it just seemed like at the beginning it was just boom, we're moving, boom, we're here, boom, we're lost, boom, now we're best friends with the Judd, and it was just almost could lose you. Like I was kind of lost.
Yeah, that was one thing that really stood out to me as a difference. Was this movie did not give me any reason to like Jason Clarke's character. Like I felt no connection with him at all.
Yeah.
And then the relationship between him and Judd just seemed like a minor plot point used to move the story forward. It didn't feel real. Yeah. And I feel like there were some things that they probably could have cut out of it and spent the time just making it feel like a more cohesive story. And I do like that they didn't try to make it too long, but I feel like this is one where the source material had enough content that it could have been longer and not felt like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I wondered, which, I vaguely remember the original Pet Sematary. I hadn't read the book, but I wondered if they based this movie off of, if it was like a remake of the original, or if they based it off the book, like made their own interpretation of the movie.
Yeah, so the movie was really strange to me, and it still is. And I wondered if, like, going back to it now, being like a year away from the last time I read the book, I would feel differently. But it feels like there were a lot of references to things from the book. Like, they were very clearly trying to incorporate it as inspiration through a lot of the beginning parts. And even though they didn't include, like, every scene from the book, the first maybe half of the movie felt very, very much rooted in the book, and almost like we're assuming that you've read it, so we're going to go over the top in making callbacks to things from it.
I gotcha.
But then the big twist is that in the book, it's Gage, not Ellie, that gets hit. And so I don't know if it was like a choice of, well, we have this story that a bunch of people love, and we're going to pepper in all of these references that give you nostalgia and make you feel the feels that you felt when you read the book, and then we're just going to throw you a total curveball and take you by surprise. Like, you think you know where this story is going, but we're going to take a hard turn and, then kind of go in our own direction for the rest of the movie. And I didn't really like that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me if they're going to base a movie off a book, why they would completely change apart, like Gage and Ellie.
Yeah, well, and I feel like kind of from that point forward, then it diverged a lot more from the book. Like, I felt like maybe that first beginning part, maybe up until the part where she got hit, it to me felt very much like the book. After that, it felt like it was, I am writing a story that's kind of inspired by the ideas in the book. And so that was it was kind of a weird about face, and it didn't really, to me, embrace a lot of the things that made the book creepy and chilling and the type of thing that would, like, stick in the back of your head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because in the book, so I was reading about this. In the book, isn't there a part where it explains, like, why they come back to life? Or isn't it like a Native American thing or something like that?
Yeah, and so they talked about I think the Wendigo is the name of it.
Yeah.
And they mention that a little bit, but they go way more in depth in the book. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And another thing too that they talk about with it is, like, the intoxicating nature of it, and how it just sort of, like, creeps into your mind once you know about it, and kind of works slowly at convincing you to rationalize to yourself why you should take someone there. And so Judd isn't doing it just because he's like, well, I know I have lots of evidence to the contrary, but why don't we just take the cat back there? What's the worst that could happen? Even though I know what's the worst that could happen, it's more like almost like a battle of will, of, like, this dark, malevolent force that is trying to control the people in the town and to get more involved with them and stuff. And to me, it was a lot creepier and a lot more compelling that way. And I felt like the way that it ended up just kind of had some plot holes that really didn't make a lot of sense, and it's just relying on you accepting kind of some of the underlying points of the book, but it wasn't really included in the movie.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. But all of that said, there were some pretty good scenes in this movie.
Yeah, no, I actually didn't mind it. Like, I mean, it's not one of my favorite of all time, but like, after I watched it, I was like, oh, that's okay. That's the thing.
The scene in the beginning, and this was in the trailer, and this is what got me super excited for this movie initially, when those kids are walking by in the creepy animal masks with the dead pet in the wheelbarrow.
Right, yeah.
I loved that scene. Everything about it was, like, perfect horror movie material.
Yeah. For sure. I definitely enjoy that as well. But they didn't really ever come back to that, though, did they?
No.
I mean, like, Ellie had one of the masks on when, I think it was it Judd that she was taking care of?
Yeah.
But it didn't. I was just like, I kind of wish they would go into that a little bit. But super creepy.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that was such a great, like, visual, like, an idea of taking a concept from from a book, and then putting it into a movie and making it, like, memorable and scary and just, like, good from a horror perspective. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I did there was a scene where Judd is talking about how to Lewis about how once you've been there, you start making up reasons to go back. And then you tell, but that's all that you get around that. So it was nice that there was at least, like, some reference. And then tells him about how, like, his dog came back but was different. And I feel like there was a lot of talk between Jason Clarke's character and his wife about, like, the afterlife, and about him not believing in it, and her not wanting to talk to the kids about death, and kind of her hang-ups with her sister and everything. And so the scene that they had later where he's talking to Ellie after she's come back, and he's saying, she says, I remember my birthday party in the truck, and then everything went black. And then, what happened? And he says, well, now you're back. And she says, back from where? I'm dead, aren't I? And it's not like she's trying to figure it out so much as she's trying to make him admit that she was dead and has come back.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like that just from a writing perspective of like making the characters face something that they don't want to.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think for me, like, I don't have specific scenes. I just have to, like, one thing that you kind of run into with some Stephen King, like movies based on Stephen King's writings, is it's like almost like you think that the book might be scarier than what they can make on a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But with this one, being someone who hadn't read the original book, vaguely remembers the movie. I thought it had some relatively good horror scenes, like just putting yourself in the mom's shoes when she's a kid, having to not understand what's going on with her sister and being creeped out by that situation. I mean, so you have that. You have like Victor haunting the dad, multiple times. Like his face is all busted up. I mean, I thought they did a really good job at trying to make this an actual horror movie.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some cheap jump scenes. I say cheap. One at the beginning was cheap, where like as soon as they pull into the house, like a semi comes flying by.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that they did good on trying to give it that haunting feeling, or the scary ambiance of the movie. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I also really like the scene where Ellie in the mask is going after Judd in his house. That was very intense.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, because Judd said something. What did he say? God, I wish I wrote it down. He said something that cracked me up. It was something like, I don't know. There's a quote that he says, like, "You're not gonna get me, asshole," or something to that effect. And I cracked up laughing. And then he got stabbed in the Achilles tendon. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But he said something, and it had me rolling. But yeah, that was definitely a good scene. And that was where Church and Ellie were both working together at that point.
Yeah, being controlled by the same entity.
Yeah.
So
Judd was weird as hell, though.
He was a strange dude. He came across as a lot stranger in this movie, I thought. But one thing that I also thought was strange was Jason Clarke's accent, that was sometimes there and sometimes not.
Oh, I didn't notice.
Like, sometimes he just talked real weird.
Yeah.
And I think the script was also a little rough for his character, because it never distinguished when he was talking to a child versus an adult. So at one point he's talking to Ellie and her friends about to go trick-or-treating, and he sees Judd in the road, and he's like, "Here's your broom, honey. Talk amongst yourselves and I'll be back." Like, who talks like that to children? Talk amongst yourselves. And then later on, when he's running out of the house towards the end, he puts Gage in the car, and he's like, "Daddy needs you to stay in the car, okay? Don't open the door for anyone, not even Ellie." That's what he says to Gage, the small child who doesn't speak. Like,
well, I mean, while we're on the subject of the dad too, I mean, so if you think about it, the logic behind this movie, so someone, and again, not familiar with the book or the old movie, I mean, the logic behind this is they buried a dead cat. Cat came back alive, but evil. Daughter dies. What does the dad decide to do? Bury dead daughter.
Yep.
She comes back evil. And it's like 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are we... And you're surprised?
Yeah. Well, and then they all just keep getting buried and coming back.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. To me, it felt like towards the end, it really, there was no mystery about what was happening. And it built up to like the big Hollywood conflict and the fight scene. And then, it just kind of ended the way you would expect. And one thing that I thought was different along those lines, because in this one too, there were the time when he was online and he saw the thing about like the bull that was dead that was then found back, and the guy whose son they thought had died in Vietnam was back. Those were like major discussion points in the book, and you got way more insight, and you had way more examples of things come back and aren't right or like good. And so the whole subplot about the thing in the woods after having made contact continues to like sort of eat away in your brain and pull you back in and find ways of like messing with your head was a lot more important because it made all that stuff make sense, like why you would still go do it. So
yeah.
Also, there was a pretty epic funeral fist fight in the book that got left out of the movie. Yeah, I always like those.
Between the dad? You like funeral fistfights?
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, like anytime there's like a public gathering and then it like devolves into violence, I'm a fan.
Specifically a funeral.
Well, I mean, a wedding would work too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just think that makes for good television. I mean, obviously it wouldn't be fun in real life, but it's just... Yeah.
I only think it'd be fun in real life.
Fair enough.
We fix to start finding some grieving people.
I think I'm going to stick to the book. You can stick to the movie. And we both get what we want.
Yeah, there you go. I have to say, so another scene, or a scene that was just like, damn, like, Ellie's going deep, was when she was stabbing her mom.
Yeah.
Just that's not funny, but she was stabbing her mom, and the quote is, "You let me die, just like your sister."
Yeah.
It was like, holy.
That was dark. Yeah.
She just went in, like she's stabbing her mom.
Yeah.
Her mom is about to die.
Yeah.
And you still have to do this? Damn.
Yeah, and that was a little weird to me too, just because I don't know. I guess maybe the mom was seen as a threat because she wanted to leave.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just, in the context of the movie, there were a lot of things that just kind of made me go, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're looking for something deep, this movie is probably not necessarily it, but if you're wanting, you know, some cheaper scares, then it's good. It did feel like a little bit throwbacky, which I liked.
Yeah.
So like the Halloween scene where they're dressed up like a ghost and whatever, like it's just that was, I like that idea. I like it. It felt like a movie from the 90s, or like when the original came out in 89.
Yeah, and we're trying to look for trends this season and like things in recent horror movies, and I realized that we ended up skipping the first Purge, so I can't speak to it, and Child's Play also wasn't available for rent, but the movies we've watched so far are Hereditary, Mother, Lady World, Ma, The Hole in the Ground, and now Pet Sematary. And in Hereditary, one of the main characters, like you were kind of following the mom and her descent into madness, and Mother was Jennifer Lawrence, and Lady World was a group of girls in the house. Ma, obviously Octavia Spencer. The Hole in the Ground, the mom was kind of the main character, and then in this one, rather than Gage, we had Ellie. And so it's interesting to me that we have all these examples of movies where a female is the antagonist. Because I don't feel like you saw much of that in the past. You know, in older movies, it was always a guy that was the one hurting people or stalking people or killing people.
Yeah. Women were the victims.
Mm-hmm. Which and I guess Hole in the Ground didn't end up that way, because at first you think it's the mom that's going crazy and is going to harm the child. Eventually you find out it's the child, but anyway. So. But yeah, I'm curious to see if that's a thing that we see picked up in the rest of the movies we watched this season, or if that just is like circumstance based on ordering.
Yeah. Could be a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I was happy with it. I mean, with this movie, I think they're, not basing it on any other, thing that they've done for Pet Sematary. Like, it was an alright movie. I mean, I didn't have to pay for it, which helps.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the greatest, but had John Lithgow in it, so that was cool. I like him.
And this made over like 5 times its budget. And I was really surprised by that. Yeah, the budget was like 21 million and it made 113 million. And for one that to me was in theaters for like a few weeks and then gone, that is really, really good. And especially for like as mediocre reviews as it seems to have across the board, it kind of seems like the average audience member maybe enjoyed it a little more than most critics or people that rate movies online.
Yeah, I definitely did not think that would be the case with this movie. I really didn't.
Yeah.
But
it didn't really ever feel like it had the same hype as like It or some of the other big ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely am curious to see where they kind of go with the whole Stephen King universe, and I'm really, really excited to watch Dr. Sleep later this season.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to that one.
And so that was another 2019 movie that's a Stephen King one, and it's based on a book, but is like a follow-up to The Shining, which we watched recently and both really enjoyed, so that should be fun.
Yeah, I remember, so some of the things I was reading was talking about, they were talking about doing a Pet Sematary 2. Well, they had a Pet Sematary 2, but one that involved Ellie again. But, I don't know if he wrote it and just didn't put it out or what, but...
Yeah. Probably sitting in his drawer for the next time he needs to pay off some taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see it too, like, so one thing I didn't say, when I was reading it in the book, and then again when I watched it happen, even though it was Ellie and not Gage and it was like a different thing, that whole like kid is out in the road, truck is coming, kid gets hit while a parent is watching it happen and trying to stop it but can't, it just made my stomach turn.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those where you just have like your hands on your face after you watch it or read it, and there's just something so primally wrong about that it's deeply disturbing. Yeah,
I mean that's obviously just watching the scene in general, you're just like, God dang it, it's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
But like those truckers, I would put out some bars on the ground or some nails, cut up their tires, take them out, teach them a lesson, beat them up.
Yeah. Or,
bury them in the ground, beat them up again.
Yeah. Or maybe put your driveway on a different side of the lot.
Yeah. Put a fence out.
Yeah.
I also wish that I like Pet Sematary. I mean, I like the Ramones. Special part of my heart for the Ramones. And the Huntingtons, which is where my love for the Ramones started from. Yeah. But I really wish that, and because that was a cover, but I wish that they ended the song with the "Take Me to Church," that popular one. Like I was just because of the cat. I was hoping, yeah. I was so hoping. I was just like, please, just take me to church. It was like, how funny would that be?
Yeah.
Didn't happen, but maybe one day, if I could pick music for movies, I'll end it with the funny one.
Yeah, Sarah gets so annoyed with me because I will pull up songs on my phone and play them on Spotify, but I'll leave the phone down by my leg and put the volume real low to see how long it takes her to realize that it's coming from me and not from the movie. And my go-tos are "My Heart Will Go On" by Celine Dion and "I Will Always Love You" by Whitney Houston. And the thing is, those are basically never out of context at the end of a movie. There are basically no movies where one of those couldn't start playing at the end and you'd be like, meh, makes sense.
Yeah. It's like the time we were at my mother-in-law's celebration and I played the 10-hour loop of Careless Whisper saxophone, the intro. And I think we made it 45 minutes before anyone noticed.
That's amazing, and I love it.
It was the best I've ever done. It was a record.
Yeah. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.